For a year and a half, Rhode Island drivers have been navigating the closure of the westbound Washington Bridge. Now the state finally has a company to build a new one.
Walsh is one of the top bridge builders in the country.
This is what they're planning to build, a bridge with 5 lanes rather than 4 and new lighting.
We wanted to provide a structure where the critical components can be easily inspected and maintained.
With a planned opening date of November 2028. So don't leave. Let's see how it comes out. Let's talk with my guest in studio, DOT Director Peter Alviti. Peter, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Gene.
You and I chat
Always nice meeting with you.
We talk every Thursday on the radio.
We do.
So we've done over the bridge and over it again.
Yep.
The news, however, is that you've awarded the contract to rebuild it. There were two competitors, and the one who got it was $50 million cheaper than the one who didn't. And to me, that's a lot of money. But is it a lot of money?
Well, you know, bids go like that. So this was a best value kind of procurement process. So the company that wins is a combination of cost and score, technical score and schedule scoring. It's a combination of things because they're going to be tasked not with just building it. They're going to be tasked with designing it and building it, both together, single source. The two companies were very, very competitive on the technical and scheduling. On the technical, they were within a couple of points of each other, and on the schedule also, I think there was a 1 week span between when one company said they would have the whole thing open and the other. So it came down to the price being the final determinant, and Walsh submitted the lower price. Now, $50 million, of course, to you and I, and to a normal person, is a lot of money. But when you put it in the context of a $340 to $380 million project, it's maybe a smaller percentage of a difference. It's not out of the question. The difference could come from the kind of supplies that one company could get versus another. What their suppliers were quoting them for, concrete and steel and fabrication and all of those things. The scope is the same for both companies generally. So the bridge that we're getting, it wouldn't be much different from one to the other. But the way they construct it, the way they use their personnel and the employees, the way that they create the materials and get supplies, could all make a difference in that $50 million range. It's not an unreasonable difference.
So just a layman says, well, are we not buying as much bridge as we should? Are we cutting corners? Is this deal too good to be true? You would say what, and what?
No, I've looked at the two designs and the two proposals and the two schedules. And they were, the end result and the product that each company would give us was very similar. The designs were similar, the schedules were similar, and the materials and methods that they were using were similar. Walsh, you know, is the largest bridge builder in the country. So they may have resources and connections to suppliers. Well, they may have fabrication, steel fabrication kind of methods and materials that they use that gave them an advantage in terms of the price.
Now the price, just give me the price to build the bridge is in the 300 millions, right? And then there are incentives that could drive up the cost, and then there's the cost of demolition. $500 million, is that out of whack in the end? In the end,
I think in the end, yes.
That's a correct figure?
Yes, absolutely. The cost to reconstruct the bridge itself, which is what we awarded last week, is $339 million. That's the cost to rebuild the bridge and open it up to traffic. We add, at DOT, we add, for example, 10% contingency to that in our budget for a project like this. So this is $339 million. But we budget ourselves with funding for another 10% to cover things like weather, extraordinary conditions that we find. There may be something we hit underground that needs to be paid for extra. Contingencies are common. We carry them on all of our projects. So we add that on. We add on the cost of administration because as part of a project like this, the federal agency which provides us with 80% of the funding, will pay for part of the administration. So we have, for example, on this project, a company that we hired of construction experts, engineering experts, that kind of look over the shoulder of this design build team and make sure that they're doing the job according to the way they proposed it. So there's that cost. We add those costs in for a budget. We don't always use that additional cost between the 339 and the $470 million. We don't typically use all of that, but we budget it into a project to cover ourselves so that we can make sure we're going to complete the project uninterrupted.
With just about a minute before we go to break. Now, all of this, already your critics, and you have a lot of them, as you know.
Yes.
They're saying this is too much money. We're overspending. $500 million. I would assume that if it's an 80-20 split, the 80 coming out of Uncle Sam, they're watching over your shoulder too. You don't overpay with the Uncle Sam watching you.
Not only are they watching, but during the procurement process, because this is such an important project, we actually had the administrator of the FHWA in Rhode Island sit in with us as an advisor as we were viewing the proposals and as we were scoring them and as we made our decision. And they are in complete conformance with our decision, and they are pleased with the results of that procurement.
I mean, it's not like this is the price, you're buying the bridge. It's not like we're getting hooked or there's nobody watching this. You're watching it, but more importantly, the federal government, which is picking up 80%, looks over your numbers.
Even more importantly, we had two of the best bridge builders in the country, the best, as a matter of fact. And they were competing to get the project. So they gave us each their best schedule and their best price. And I think the results showed that. They were so close in many aspects. You could see how competitive they were being in putting together their proposals. And they both wanted this very, I feel bad for the company that didn't get it. They put a good effort in, but Walsh was just one step ahead of them on the cost.
Okay, when we come back, let's continue with Peter and talk a little bit of history. What went wrong and what can he tell us about what went wrong? It may not be a lot because it's all tied up in a lawsuit. Stay with us. Welcome back. DOT Director Peter Alviti continues with us. Just yesterday I reported on the news that the two companies the state is suing over what happened with the bridge, are pushing back and filing motions saying it's the DOT, not us. Yes, we inspected it, but that bridge hadn't been inspected in 30 years. And you know what? They never told us to look in certain areas, hidden spots. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, you know, I've said I'm pretty much restricted in how much I can discuss these kinds of topics. But let me say this about that. For decades, DOT has decided decades ago to begin outsourcing expertise and engineering expertise because thought was back then, and frankly, I still believe it's still the case, that the private sector has better resources and more expertise than government does to provide engineering expertise on major projects. And that has historically been outsourced. And I'm actually a proponent of that. Privatization and private sector innovation, expertise, and resources have, particularly in the area of engineering, been always heavily relied upon, and we still do. That's proven to be a good process for DOT. In the last 8 years, we built over 300 bridges. Haven't had a problem with any of them. We had minor problems, but the private sector engineers who designed and built those have done a great job. Once in a while, they mess up. I think in this case is that part of that process. I think the governor and the attorney general framed this recent claim by the private companies as being something that is usual and customary in the course of these kinds of court cases where you're holding a private company responsible for the guidance that they gave you. and we'll let that play out in court.
Listen, it's not a courtroom, but and you can say what you want to say, but let me press you. The thing hadn't been inspected, they say, for 30 years before they came on board, and that there were parts of that bridge that say should have been told about, hidden pins, areas you really can't see. Does any of this have merit? They put it in writing.
I don't believe it does. I think that will play itself out in court. I think the Attorney General framed it properly. Look, these kinds of counterclaims by companies that are being held accountable are common in these kinds of court proceedings. And they may make more of them. I think that in the end, the facts will play themselves out and show that there was responsibility there on the part of these private companies.
In the end, this may be a percentage of blame. If you prevail and you do well, if it goes to a jury or a judge, whoever makes a decision here, may say 80% the bridge companies, 20% DOT. Are you prepared to accept any form of blame on this?
Well, look, yeah, I mean, the facts will present themselves and let them, a similar thing happened with the tolling case, right?
No.
There was speculation of whether or not DOT and the state of Rhode Island did something unconstitutional or wrong in imposing truck tolls, right? We held that we were on firm legal grounds, and that ebbed and flowed through the court proceedings and from one court to another. In the end, I think the same outcome will happen here. There was a final judgment in the favor of the state.
Mm-hmm.
I think
with regard to the tolls.
With regard to the tolls, and I think eventually, knowing what I know about this, the same will be true with this
Now,
case.
with regard to those tolls, we can move along to those. They're going to be turned on next year.
Yes.
That's already money in the budget.
Yes.
And I know you execute what the legislature decides.
Yes.
Have you figured out how you're going to help companies like JobLot navigate this? Because I must say, I had Mark Perlman on a couple of weeks ago, very angry. He said, "You're going to charge me twice. My truck is moving all around." It's untenable in his mind, in his business plan.
Right.
Do you know if there's a plan?
Yep. So that plan is evolving as we speak. I think that, look, companies like JobLot, yes, would be affected by truck tolling. Not unlike they pay truck tolls everywhere they do business up and down the Eastern Seaboard. The only state along the Eastern Seaboard that JobLot and other companies like them were not paying tolls in for their trucks was Rhode Island. Rhode Island was the only state not charging tolls. Now, granted, it's just for trucks, but whether it's for trucks or cars or whatever, they're actually paying more in other states than even our truck tolling program would charge them for this going under our gantries.
Correct.
So this is part of doing business, and this is the same we expected that there would be resistance by the companies. It's the same resistance that they played in the original roadworks legislation back 10 years ago. That's played out in court. We're going forward with it. The governor has budgeted into this next fiscal year revenue from it, and we are in the process of re-implementing it and getting the equipment turned back on. So
I've only got 20 seconds, but go ahead.
So yes, we will be addressing some of those concerns, but it is a tolling program that is moving forward.
All right, we'll have to save a few other topics for when you come on the radio with me on Thursday.
We will.
And we'll talk more about the 2 cents in gas tax for RIPTA and EV. We'll continue our conversation. In the meantime, that's Peter Alviti. And that's 10 News Conference, your #1 and longest running political show in Southern New England. Reminder, watch all of our interviews on turnto10.com. For now, I'm Gene Valicenti. See you on the news at 6 and on WPRO weekday mornings.